Y lo vamos a hacer con AllianceBernstein. Vamos a hablar en los próximos minutos con Robert Milano, que es Senior Investment Strategist y Head de EMEA Equity Business Development en AllianceBernstein. Robert, thank you so much for being in Office Television. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're going to speak about healthcare sector because healthcare stocks have underperformed the global market this year, and investors might be disappointed because of this. What do you think from AllianceBernstein? Will healthcare remain an important and successful investment sector?
Yeah, look, we remain really optimistic about the healthcare sector over the longer term. I mean, it's true this year has been a frustrating and challenging year, but that's not just for healthcare. That's for a lot of components of the global market. Looking at performance this year, the MSCI World Healthcare Index through yesterday's close is down 3% for the year, while the broader MSCI World is up 15.5%. But we have to remember that that follows a year where the healthcare sector was down 5.4% last year, with the broader market down 18.1%. So you had really significant outperformance in a difficult market. And this year, with this risk-on rotation that we've seen towards all things tech and AI, that has really driven a lot of the kind of rotation away from healthcare, which is a relatively strong performer, into kind of most specifically the Magnificent Seven and tech beneficiaries. So in short, it doesn't really change our view about the longer-term attractiveness of the sector, more of a frustration around just how narrow the market has been this year and how focused it's been on a very small subset of companies.
Healthcare, Robert, is often considered as a defensive sector. What is your view on that?
It is. It's very true. So when we look back at history, going back to 2000, healthcare has outperformed the broader market in every down year over the last 22, 23 years. So it definitely has those characteristics about defense, right? Because we have to access the healthcare system. The world is getting older, and we all need to, as we age, one, go to the doctor more regularly, unfortunately undergo more procedures. We have to take more medication to keep ourselves healthy. So there is this really defensive characteristic around it. But people do tend to often overlook how offensive it can also be. So if you look back over the last, call it 23 years or so, it's been a really resilient space. The last 10 years and 15 years on an annualized basis, healthcare has been the second best performing sector in the market after just technology, and pretty significantly outperformed the broader MSCI World. So that offensive capability is certainly still there. And I think it's really been a function of the evolution of the healthcare sector. When we look back 20 years ago, healthcare was very heavily focused on pharmaceuticals. That made up more than 3/4 of the index. As you then have kind of advanced forward 10 years and then 10 years after that, the composition of the healthcare sector has skewed a lot more heavily towards growthier areas within healthcare. So biotechnology, medical devices, life sciences, healthcare technology. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to hopefully improve the inefficiencies in the space, improve the quality of care for the patient, and that offers really interesting longer-term growth opportunity.
Artificial intelligence, Robert, is a buzzword in the media. Is AI also important for the healthcare sector? What do you think, or what kind of interesting innovations do you see in AI in the healthcare sector?
Yeah, it's absolutely an area where we think there is great longer-term opportunity within the space, and the one that we think the market has largely underappreciated, right? A lot of the focus on AI has been tech and direct tech beneficiaries, whether that's semiconductor companies supplying the tools for us to leverage and build out our capabilities in AI, or those who are leveraging AI to produce tangible revenue streams, or for those who are looking to improve efficiencies. But on the healthcare side, I mean, if anybody goes to the doctor today, you probably still have to fill out a binder of paperwork that's about this thick just to go in and see your regular doctor, right? So there's a lot of data there that we can certainly look to use in a better and more efficient way, and we think AI can certainly help with that. Other areas that we think are quite interesting on the healthcare side are reducing medical errors. So using AI or maybe application-based tools for a doctor to say, here are the symptoms for this particular patient. What's the probability that they have this particular disorder, right, or this particular disease? So helping to reduce misdiagnoses, help to capture and kind of identify things earlier in their process, which makes the treatment of those issues a lot more effective and also helps to improve the outcome for you as the patient. Other areas that we're thinking about are areas like robotic technology. There's already companies out there producing these very effective robotic surgery tools, which takes an average surgeon and turns them into an above average surgeon. But using AI, what some of these companies can look to do is, seems very sci-fi, but as you're performing a procedure on a patient, you can look through the screen on the device and you can overlay a medical image, for instance, on an organ. So you know, based on your previous scans as a doctor, you can say, okay, here is where I need to operate to remove cancer. I'm going to make sure I remove the right amount and not too little or too much, because that can also have adverse impacts. There's also opportunities for benchmarking, for instance, so those doctors using these tools can see how long did it take them to perform that procedure, how many tools did they use compared to other doctors doing a similar procedure. So it really allows for identification of training opportunities to make these doctors a lot better at performing these procedures. And then one other interesting area of opportunity is identifying the right candidates for clinical trials, right, and clinical trial management, so that we can identify an appropriate pool of candidates that would better represent who might be looking to take one of these particular drugs, so we have a more efficacious results at the end of that clinical trial. So these are all really interesting longer-term opportunities, but what's really, really important is finding the companies who aren't just solely trying to invest in AI, right? They have other avenues of growth that can help to drive the business today, and they're investing in AI as an additional layer of either efficiency gains or an additional layer of growth, and we think that's going to be really important to help drive sustainable fundamental performance for companies.
I wanted to ask you now about your fund, AB International Healthcare. How is it positioned, and if you can give examples of companies in your portfolio that use artificial intelligence technology?
Sure. So when we look at the overall industry exposure, we're fairly diversified across the portfolio. So this is not a single sub-industry focus or a single theme focused healthcare portfolio. Really, how we think about investing here is not focusing on science. In fact, we think that focusing on the science in this space can lead to really volatile outcomes for clients. Instead, what we look to do is identify companies that have a high and improving level of profitability, have ample opportunity to reinvest those profits back into the business above the company's own cost of capital. And if you can do that, you can self-fund your longer-term growth aspirations. It leads to more consistent fundamental performance, which over time we believe leads to more consistent risk-adjusted performance for our clients. So where we have the exposure today, we've got a larger exposure to biotech. That's an overweight versus the broader market. And that's not small and mid-cap biotech, the really speculative ones, but instead it's those who are very effective from a research and development perspective, where they've had success in developing new products that help to really improve the outcome for the patient, and where they're investing to drive the next leg of growth. So those are areas that we think are quite interesting. We are underweight to pharmaceuticals. Those tend to be, in many cases, very large and established businesses, very mature. The risk we tend to see in this space is as a drug goes off patent, it requires the company to then try and find another revenue stream to offset the loss of those revenues from the patent cliff. So you tend to see management teams which go out and they make a very large acquisition, which over time, in many cases, tends to be shareholder value destructive. So these businesses don't necessarily have the growth characteristics that we tend to favor in this portfolio. It's not to say we have no exposure. It's actually about a third of the portfolio is in pharma, but it is an underweight versus the broader market, and very selective about individual positions that we own. And the AI exposure within the portfolio is spread across a number of different names. So there's names on the robotic surgery side, even managed care, so health insurance in the US, private health insurance, companies that are taking advantage of their really large networks of doctors and patients where they have a wealth of data and they're trying to use AI to improve the overall patient's outcome and improve the patient's access to the healthcare system and improve their overall engagement with the system as well. So we think there's a wealth of opportunities across the board here.
Robert Milano, Senior Investment Strategist and Head of EMEA Equity Business Development at AllianceBernstein. As always, it's a pleasure to have you here. Robert, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a great time. Thank you.
Bueno, pues hablábamos de salud, del sector de la salud, de la inversión en este sector y ahora cambiamos de tema radicalmente porque ya saben que toda la atención hoy ha estado puesta en el Congreso de los